A cowboy with a past as an outlaw said you shouldn't trust me. She said I already do. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the dusty town of Silver Creek. The streets were empty except for a few early risers tending to their chores, and the wind whispered softly through the wooden buildings. A lone figure appeared at the edge of town, riding a tired horse. Dust clung to his worn boots and coat, and his wide-brimmed hat shadowed a face that had known too many hard years. This was Cole, a man whose name once carried fear, and whose past still followed him like a shadow he could never fully shake. Cole's horse, a gray mare with a steady gait, plodded slowly along the uneven street. He looked around cautiously, his eyes scanning the town as if expecting trouble at any corner. His presence was quiet, but commanding, the kind of quiet that made people notice without even realizing why. The town saloon doors creaked as he passed, and a few heads peeked out of windows, curious about the stranger who had just arrived. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared. Rumors traveled faster than the morning wind in small towns like Silver Creek, and a new face always stirred whispers. Cole had a past, not the kind of past you could hide easily, not the kind of past that washed away with time. He had been an outlaw, someone who lived on the edge, taking what he needed and running when the law got too close. He had robbed trains and banks, fought men twice his size, and escaped with narrow margins more than once, but that life was over. He had left it behind, or at least, he hoped he had. He wanted a fresh start, a simple life far from the gunfire and fear that had defined his younger years. He rode toward the edge of town where the ranches began. The scent of hay, horses, and freshly cut grass was a strange comfort, after years of smoke, dust, and the acrid tang of gunpowder. Cole had taken work at a small ranch, promising the owner he was strong, reliable, and willing to learn. He had no intention of revealing the full truth of who he was. Why risk it when most people could never see past the face of a former outlaw? As he dismounted, Cole tied his horse to a post and looked around. The ranch was modest but well kept. A wooden fence ran along the perimeter, enclosing a few grazing horses and a small barn. The smell of fresh bread wafted from the farmhouse, and he could hear the low murmur of a woman speaking to someone inside. He hesitated for a moment, hand resting on the worn leather of his holster, though he had no plans to use it. Old habits died slowly, and caution was something you never fully outgrew. From the barn, a woman appeared, carrying a bucket of water. She was young, but had the kind of strength that came from years of work under the sun. Her hair was tied back, and her hands were calloused from handling tools and animals. Her name was Lila, and she was the reason the ranch ran so smoothly. She noticed Cole immediately, her eyes taking in his dusty coat, his tired horse, and the wary way he carried himself. Something about him seemed familiar, not in face, but in the way he moved, careful, measured, yet confident in a quiet way. "Morning," she said, her voice calm but curious. Cole nodded in return, tipping his hat slightly. "Morning," he replied, his voice low and steady. He was unused to being greeted so openly. Most people either feared him or ignored him entirely. "I'm Cole," he said, extending a hand, though he was unsure if introductions mattered in a town where people already whispered his story. "Leela," she answered, shaking his hand firmly. Her grip was strong, honest. There was no fear in her eyes, no judgment. That surprised him. Most people he met carried suspicion like a shield, ready to strike at the first sign of weakness, but Lila didn't seem to carry such a shield. Cole took a deep breath, letting the morning air fill his lungs. It smelled of fresh earth, of possibilities. Maybe, just maybe, he could find the peace he longed for here. The ranch offered work, and work was something he understood. It didn't ask for explanations or histories. It simply demanded effort, patience, and a willingness to learn. And Cole had both, in abundance. As the day passed, Cole began helping around the ranch. He fed the horses, fixed a broken fence, and carried hay bales to the barn. Lila watched him work with quiet interest, occasionally giving instructions or advice. She was patient but firm, and Cole found himself respecting her more than anyone had in years. Her presence was calming, grounding him in a way he hadn't felt since he left his outlaw life behind. Despite the work, Cole couldn't completely shake the memories. Every creak of a board, every sudden sound of hooves on the dirt, reminded him of a time when life was a constant struggle for survival. He remembered nights spent hiding in the shadows, the sting of cold metal against his hand, and the rush of adrenaline as he escaped once more. Those memories haunted him, but he kept them tucked away, only allowing them to surface when necessary. As evening approached, the sun dipping low and painting the sky with streaks of pink and purple, Cole finally sat down on a log near the barn. He watched Lila tend to the horses, the way she moved with ease and confidence. He realized he had not felt peace like this in years. The weight of his past still pressed on his shoulders, but for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe here, among honest people and honest work, he could find a place to belong. But the town had its own memories, and Cole's reputation traveled faster than he did. By the time night fell, whispers had reached the ears of a few townsfolk. They watched from windows and doorways, talking quietly among themselves. "Is that him?" one whispered. "The outlaw."
Another shook their head. "I heard he's trying to change."
But can a man really leave the past behind? Cole heard none of this, but he could sense the unease in the air. He knew that no matter how far he ran or how much he tried to be someone new, the past would always be a part of him. It was a shadow, following him silently, waiting for the moment he let his guard down. Back at the house, Lila prepared a simple meal and called Cole in. He accepted, grateful for the warmth of the fire and the smell of food. As they sat together, the conversation was light at first, talking about chores, the ranch, and small-town life. But gradually, Lila's curiosity grew, and she asked questions about his past. Cole hesitated. He had promised himself he wouldn't reveal too much. "I've had a life different from most," he said, carefully choosing his words. "A life I don't talk about much." Lila nodded as if she understood without needing the details. "We all have things we don't talk about," she said. Her tone was soft, but there was a strength in it that made Cole pause. "Desmond. No judgment, no fear, just understanding." He felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years. Trust. The night grew deeper, and Cole stepped outside for a moment. The stars were bright in the clear sky, and the quiet of the desert stretched endlessly around him. He thought about the path that had brought him here, the choices he had made, and the possibility of a new beginning. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. His past would not disappear overnight, and the town might never fully forgive him. But for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope. Somewhere inside, he made a silent promise to try, to change, and to live a life worthy of trust. He didn't know if he could, but he was willing to try. And as he looked back toward the warm glow of the farmhouse, he realized that maybe, just maybe, someone like Lila could help him find the person he wanted to become. Cole mounted his horse once more and rode slowly along the outskirts of the ranch, letting the evening breeze cool his tired face. The past was still there, and the future uncertain, but for the first time in many years he felt that he was not entirely alone. And in that moment under the wide open sky, he allowed himself to hope that change was possible, and that trust, like the dawn, could rise slowly, quietly, and surely. The next morning, the ranch was alive with the sounds of animals and work. Roosters crowed, horses neighed, and the wind rustled the tall grass that surrounded the small property. Cole woke early, as he always did, letting the quiet morning guide him. The memories of his past still tugged at him, but the calm of the ranch and the presence of Lila offered him a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He walked toward the barn, his boots crunching on the dry dirt, and found Lila already there, brushing the horses and humming softly. She looked up and smiled when she saw him. "Good morning," she said. "You slept well?" "Better than I have in a long time," he admitted. There was honesty in his voice, an honesty he rarely gave anyone. "Good," Lila replied. "We have a lot to do today." Her tone was practical, but there was warmth in her words. She handed him a brush and motioned toward a bay horse that was restless in its stall. "This one's tricky. Be gentle, but firm. You have to earn his trust." Cole knelt beside the horse, feeling its muscles under the coarse hair. He had handled horses before, during his life on the road, but this was different. This wasn't about escaping danger or riding fast. It was about care, patience, and trust. He worked slowly, letting the horse feel his presence. Gradually, the animal relaxed under his hands, and Cole felt a small but satisfying sense of accomplishment.
"You're good with him," Lila observed, leaning against the stall.
Most people scare him.
"I guess I've learned a thing or two about patience." He avoided mentioning that his past had forced him to trust very few people, and even fewer had trusted him. Lila's calm demeanor made him feel like he could drop the walls he had built around himself, even if just a little.
As the morning passed, Cole and Lila worked side by side, feeding the horses, mending fences, and checking the small vegetable garden behind the house. There was a rhythm to their work, a quiet companionship that required no words. Sometimes Lila would glance at him, and their eyes would meet, exchanging silent understanding. It was a connection that grew stronger with each passing hour. Psst. After a break for water, Lila handed Cole a bucket and gestured toward the far side of the ranch. "We need to move the hay bales to the back." "It's heavy work, but I know you can handle it." Cole smiled faintly. "Heavy work is fine." "I'm used to it!" He hoisted a bale onto his shoulder, feeling the strain in his muscles, and began walking toward the storage area. Lila followed, carrying another bale with ease. The two moved together, working efficiently, their steps synchronized in a way that felt natural. During a brief pause, Cole leaned against a fence post, wiping sweat from his brow. "Lila," he said hesitantly, "I should tell you something. About me."
Lila looked at him, tilting her head slightly. "Go on." He took a deep breath.
"I've lived a life that, well, it wasn't always good. I did things I'm not proud of, things that hurt people." His voice was low, almost a whisper, as if admitting the truth aloud might make it real. "I'm not proud of who I was." Lila's eyes softened, and she took a step closer. "Cole," she said gently, "we all have pasts. What matters is who we are now and what we do with today."
Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that made Cole pause.
No one had ever spoken to him like that before, not with understanding, not without fear or judgment. "You really mean that?" he asked, skeptical but hopeful.
"I do," Lila said, smiling faintly. "I see who you are, not just what you've done." Cole felt a warmth in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years.
Trust was fragile, he knew, and he had been burned too many times to give it easily. But something about Lila made him believe it could exist again. Their work continued through the day, and the ranch seemed to hum with life. Birds sang from the trees, and the horses grazed peacefully in the fields. Cole began to notice small things about Lila. The way she laughed quietly when a horse nibbled at her sleeve, the way she carefully checked the plants in the garden, the gentle strength in her hands as she lifted heavy objects without complaint. Both strong and kind. And Cole admired her in a way he hadn't allowed himself to admire anyone in a long time. But peace is never permanent, especially for someone like Cole. Late in the afternoon, as the sun began to dip behind the distant hills, a rider appeared at the edge of town. His presence was tense, urgent, and familiar. Cole's heart sank when he recognized the man, Jackson, a former member of the gang Cole had once run with. Jackson's eyes scanned the ranch, landing on Cole with a mixture of surprise and recognition. Jackson rode closer, a smirk on his face that didn't reach his eyes. "Well, well, look who we have here," he called out, his voice carrying across the fields. "Cole, thought you could run from us?" Cole's jaw tightened. He had hoped his past would not find him here, that the quiet life he was building would remain untouched. But the past has a way of catching up, no matter how far you ride.
He glanced at Lila, who was standing near the barn, her face calm but alert.
Pants. She had noticed the tension in his stance and the subtle shift in his demeanor.
"Jackson," Cole said evenly, keeping his tone calm.
"Desk. I'm not looking for trouble," Jackson laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Trouble always finds you, doesn't it? You think you can settle down, live a quiet life, and it just ends? Not for people like us." He dismounted, walking toward the ranch with a deliberate, threatening gait. Lila stepped forward, placing herself slightly between Cole and Jackson. "We don't want any trouble," she said firmly. "This is a peaceful place. If you're looking for something, it's not here." Jackson's eyes flicked to her, and for a brief moment Cole saw surprise in his expression. Most people would have cowered or run. But Lila stood her ground, calm and confident. It gave Cole a small measure of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could face this without violence. "I'm not here to start a fight yet," Jackson said, his tone warning but controlled. "But I know what you owe, Cole. And I intend to collect." Cole clenched his fists, struggling to keep his temper in check. He had left that life behind for a reason. He had promised himself he would not return to it. But now here it was, threatening the fragile peace he had begun to build. Lila's hand brushed lightly against his arm. "You're not alone," she said softly. Her presence reminded him that he didn't have to face this alone, that he had someone willing to trust him, even knowing the dangers. Cole took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Jackson," he said, "I don't owe you anything. That life is over." Jackson's smirk faded slightly, replaced by a calculating glare. "We'll see about that," he said. Mounting his horse, he glanced back one last time before riding away, leaving a sense of unease hanging in the air. Cole exhaled, feeling the tension leave his body slowly. He looked at Lila, grateful for her presence.
"You shouldn't have gotten involved," he said quietly.
"I already am," she replied simply, her eyes meeting his with quiet trust. Those words struck him harder than any threat. She trusted him, believed in him, and stood by him without fear. It was something he had not experienced in a long, long time. The sun continued to set, casting long shadows over the ranch. Cole knew that Jackson's visit was only the beginning of a challenge he could not ignore. But he also knew that with Lila by his side, he had a chance to face it differently. Not with fear, anger, or violence, but with courage, patience, and careful planning. That night, as they worked to secure the horses and lock up the barn, Cole felt a strange sense of hope. His past was not gone, and the road ahead would be difficult. But he had someone who trusted him, someone who saw beyond the mistakes he had made. And for the first time in years, he believed that maybe, just maybe, he could truly change. Cole stayed up late that night, thinking about the day and the moments he had shared with Lila. He knew that trust was fragile, but he also knew that it could grow, slowly, through actions and patience. He resolved to honor that trust, not just for Lila, but for himself. As he finally laid down to rest, the ranch was quiet except for the soft breathing of the horses and the distant call of an owl. Cole closed his eyes, letting the weight of the day settle. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, perhaps even Jackson's return. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of peace, feeling the possibility of a life rebuilt on trust, honesty, and hope. The next morning, Silver Creek was quieter than usual. The wind carried a faint chill, and the horizon was tinged with pale light. Cole woke early, as was his habit, feeling the weight of the previous day pressing on him. Jackson's visit had stirred memories he thought he had buried. He had faced men with guns and threats countless times before. But now, in a town where he hoped to live peacefully, the stakes felt different. This wasn't about survival alone. This was about protecting a life he had just begun to care about. He went to the barn, where Lila was already busy tending to the horses. The morning light caught the shine of her hair, and for a moment, Cole felt a sharp pang of guilt for dragging danger into her life. She noticed his arrival and smiled faintly, though she could sense the tension in him. "Morning," she said softly. "You look troubled," but didn't speak immediately. "They have bad them!" "It's Jackson," he finally admitted. "He won't let things go. He wants me to return, or else." Lila's expression didn't waver. She set aside the brush she was holding and stepped closer. "We'll handle it together," she said. "You're not facing him alone." Cole felt a mix of relief and admiration. Her words were simple, yet they carried a strength that steadied him. He had grown accustomed to facing danger alone, trusting no one, relying only on his own instincts. But Lila's calm confidence reminded him that some battles could be fought differently, through planning, patience, and partnership. The day began with the usual chores, but Cole's mind was partly elsewhere. Every sound, the whinny of a horse, the creak of a barn door, the distant rumble of wheels on the dirt road, made him alert. He moved deliberately, quietly, ensuring that his actions didn't draw unnecessary attention. Meanwhile, Lila worked alongside him, noticing subtle changes in his behavior but choosing not to question him too closely. She trusted him, and that trust was growing stronger each day. By midday, Cole had made a decision. He couldn't wait for Jackson to act. He needed to be ready. He and Lila walked to a quiet spot near the edge of the ranch, behind a cluster of trees and rocks that offered a natural hiding place. "We need a plan," Cole said, lowering his voice. "Jackson isn't just here to talk. He'll push until he gets what he wants. If we're careful, we can avoid violence, but we have to be smart." "Lila, listen carefully," nodding. "What do you suggest?" she asked. Her eyes were steady, her voice calm. And Cole found courage in her steadiness. Cole outlined his plan. He would lure Jackson and any potential allies into a situation where they could be contained, not harmed, forcing them to leave town without resorting to guns or bloodshed. Lila helped him think through the details, offering practical solutions: where to place obstacles, which paths would slow horses down, and how to use the terrain to their advantage. Together they crafted a plan that relied on cleverness and strategy, rather than brute force. As the sun climbed higher, Cole and Lila put their plan into motion. They moved quietly, setting small barriers along the dirt paths near the ranch, arranging loose rocks and fallen logs to slow anyone unfamiliar with the area. Cole kept his eyes sharp, scanning the horizon for movement. Lila followed, carrying supplies and watching his back, her presence a constant reminder that he wasn't alone. By late afternoon, Jackson returned, riding with two men Cole recognized from his past. Their faces were hard, their eyes wary, and they carried themselves with the confidence of men who believed they could intimidate anyone. But Cole and Lila were ready. Jackson dismounted first, his gaze sweeping over the ranch.
"Cole," he said, his tone a mix of warning and disbelief. "You think you can hide here?"
Frowned in desperation. Cole stepped forward calmly.
"This isn't your fight anymore," he said. "I'm done with that life."
Belief, and no one gets hurt.
Jackson laughed, a short, harsh sound that carried across the fields.
"You always think you can run from the past," he said, "but it catches up with everyone eventually." Lila stood beside Cole, her presence steady.
"He's not running," she said firmly. "This is his home now, and he won't let anyone destroy it."
Jackson hesitated, momentarily thrown off by her confidence.
Most people would have cowered or stayed silent, but Lila spoke with clarity and courage. That hesitation was all Cole needed. He subtly signaled, and the plan they had devised began to take shape. Rocks shifted under the hooves of the men's horses as they moved along the path, slowing their approach. Fallen logs created obstacles that forced the horses to halt, and the terrain, unfamiliar to them, made progress difficult. Cole and Lila watched carefully, ensuring the situation remained under control without escalating to violence. "You've changed," Jackson finally muttered, frustration in his voice. "You're not the man I knew." Cole nodded. "I've learned from my mistakes. I won't be the man you expect anymore." The tension in the air was thick, but Cole remained calm. Every step was deliberate, every move calculated. He used his knowledge of the land and the lessons he had learned during his years on the run to outsmart Jackson and his men. The group became frustrated, their confidence waning as they struggled with the obstacles and confusion. Lila stayed close, ready to act if needed, but trusting Cole to lead. "You've got this," she whispered quietly, her hand brushing his arm. That simple touch strengthened his resolve. Trust wasn't just a feeling, it was an action, a partnership, and Cole felt that he could finally rely on someone without fear of betrayal. Hours passed, and the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields. Jackson and his men, exhausted and unable to navigate the terrain effectively, realized that continuing the pursuit was futile. Cole had not fought them with violence, yet he had won. He had proven that change and strategy could triumph over old ways of living. Finally, Jackson raised his hands in resignation. "You've outsmarted us," he admitted, his tone grudging but honest.
"But don't think this ends here. The past doesn't disappear so easily."
Cole stood tall, his expression calm but firm. "It ends here for me. I'm done running, and I won't go back. Leave Silver Creek, and do not return." Jackson glanced at the obstacles, the clever arrangements of rocks and logs, and the determined stance of Cole and Lila. For the first time, he realized that the man he once knew had truly changed. With a final, bitter glance, he mounted his horse and rode away, the two men beside him following silently. The tension that had hung over the ranch lifted, replaced by the quiet hum of the evening. Cole exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of months, even years, slowly ease from his shoulders. He looked at Lila, who had watched the entire encounter with calm, unwavering trust. "You were incredible," he said quietly. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. We were incredible. Together. For a long moment they stood there in silence, the cool evening air surrounding them. Cole realized that this day had changed him more than he had expected. He had faced his past, protected his present, and begun to embrace the possibility of a future built on trust, honesty, and courage. As night fell, the ranch was calm. The stars blinked softly in the sky, and the horses grazed quietly in the fields. Cole and Delilah sat near the barn, sharing a simple meal by lantern light. The warmth of the fire, the gentle sound of the animals, and the quiet presence of someone who trusted him completely made Cole feel a peace he hadn't known in years. "I shouldn't have trusted anyone again," he said softly, almost to himself.
"You already did," Lila replied, her eyes meeting his. "And you were right, too."
Trust isn't given lightly, but sometimes it's worth it. Cole felt a lump in his throat. Her words were simple, but they resonated deeply. He had spent years hiding, running, and fearing betrayal. Yet here was someone who believed in him, stood by him, and allowed him to be more than his past. That night, Cole lay under the wide-open sky, listening to the distant sounds of Silver Creek settling into rest. He thought about the day, about Jackson, about the obstacles they had used, and about the quiet strength of Lila. Change was never easy, but he understood now that it was possible, and with someone by his side who trusted him, he could face whatever challenges the future might bring. The night deepened, cool and still, and Cole finally allowed himself to rest. Tomorrow would bring new work, new challenges, and perhaps new threats. But for the first time he felt prepared to face them, not with fear, not with regret, but with the quiet strength that comes from trust, partnership, and the determination to become the man he wanted to be. And in that quiet moment, under the soft glow of the stars, Cole realized something profound. The past could haunt him. The world could test him, but with courage, cleverness, and the trust of someone who believed in him, he could carve a new life, one step at a time. The morning sun rose slowly over Silver Creek, painting the small town in shades of gold and amber. Cole woke early, as he always did, but today felt different. There was a sense of calm in the air that he hadn't felt in years. Jackson and his men had left the day before, and the ranch was quiet once more. The threat of the past still lingered like a shadow, but it was distant now, pushed back by the strength of the present. Cole walked to the barn where Lila was already at work, brushing the horses and humming softly. She looked up when she saw him approaching, her eyes bright and welcoming. "Morning," she said. "Sleep well?" Cole nodded, tipping his hat. "Better than I have in a long time," he admitted. The words felt honest, and for the first time in months, he truly meant them. The danger that had haunted him for so long seemed manageable now, and he owed that peace to the life he was building here and to the person standing beside him. They worked side by side, moving hay bales, tending to the animals, and repairing fences. Their movements were in rhythm, a quiet dance of cooperation and trust. Cole noticed small details. The way Lila laughed when a horse nudged her shoulder, the careful way she arranged the fresh feed, the subtle way she kept watch for any signs of trouble. It struck him how much he had come to rely on her presence, how her calm strength made him feel grounded.
By midday, the town began to stir.
Merchants opened their shops, children ran through the streets, and the hum of daily life returned. Cole and Lila paused to take a break under the shade of a large oak tree. Cole reached into his satchel and pulled out a small piece of bread, offering half to Lila. She smiled and accepted it, sitting beside him on the grass. "I've been thinking," Cole said, breaking the comfortable silence, "about the past."
And the future.
He looked down at his hands, rough and calloused from years of hard living. I never thought I'd see a day where I could just...
Live, without looking over my shoulder every minute. Lila reached out, placing a hand over his. You've earned it. And you're not alone anymore. Cole felt a lump in his throat. Those words, so simple, carried a weight that no amount of money, power, or running had ever given him. Trust. Acceptance. A chance to start over. He realized that for years he had run from the world, believing he was unworthy of it, unworthy of peace, unworthy of someone like Lila. But now, sitting under the shade of the oak tree, he understood that he had the right to hope, the right to belong, and the right to be trusted. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by the sound of horses approaching from the direction of town. Cole tensed instinctively, his hand hovering near his holster. But as the riders drew closer, he recognized familiar faces, neighbors, townsfolk who had watched him work over the past weeks, curious but cautious. They rode slowly, not with hostility, but with a cautious respect. One of the townsmen, a tall man with a kind face named Henry, dismounted and approached. Cole, he said, voice steady but warm. We've been watching. You handled Jackson and his men the other day. Clever and brave. Seems like you're not the same man you used to be.
Cole felt a mixture of relief and humility. He had feared that no one would ever see the man he was trying to become, that his past would forever overshadow him.
Yet here was proof that change was possible, that people could recognize effort, courage, and honesty when they saw it.
Thank you, Cole said quietly. I'm just trying to live right now to make things better. Henry nodded. We believe you. Silver Creek is a small town, but it has room for people who truly want to do right. As the townsfolk left, Cole turned back to Lila, who was watching him with a soft smile. You were right, he said. Change is possible.
I didn't think it would ever feel real, but it does now. Thanks to you.
Lila shrugged gently. You did the hard part, she said. I just stood by you. That's what trust is. The rest of the day was filled with ordinary work, but for Cole it felt extraordinary. Every hammer swing, every bale of hay, every brush of a horse's mane reinforced the new life he was building. He realized that redemption wasn't about grand gestures. It was about small, consistent actions, about choosing the right path even when it was hard, about honoring the trust others gave him. As evening approached, a calm descended over the ranch. The sky turned pink and purple, and the soft chirping of crickets began to fill the air. Cole and Lila walked to the edge of the property, watching the sun dip below the distant hills. You know, Lila said quietly, I always knew you could be better than the life you left behind. I just hoped you'd let yourself see it too. Cole smiled faintly.
It took me longer than it should have, he admitted.
Bah, I was afraid that I didn't deserve a second chance. You do, Lila said firmly. Everyone deserves a second chance. And you've earned yours, Cole. You've proven that you can change, that you can protect what's important, and that you can be trusted. Cole felt a deep sense of gratitude and relief. Her words weren't just comforting, they were true. For the first time in his life, he believed in himself in a way that wasn't tied to fear, guilt, or survival. He could finally imagine a future where he was more than the mistakes he had made. That night, the ranch was quiet, The horses slept in their stalls, the wind whispered softly through the trees, and the stars shone brightly overhead. Cole sat outside the barn, Lila beside him, sharing a simple meal of bread and cheese. The warmth of the lantern light, the calm of the night, and the steady presence of someone who trusted him completely made him feel at peace in a way he hadn't thought possible. "I shouldn't have hoped for this," he said softly. "You already did," Lila replied, echoing the words she had spoken before. "And you were right, too. Hope is worth it. Trust is worth it." Cole nodded, letting the weight of the past lift slightly. He realized that life was fragile, that danger and uncertainty could return at any moment, but he also knew that he had the strength to face it, and someone by his side who believed in him. That combination was more powerful than any gun, any plan, or any escape route he had ever known. The next morning brought more work, more routine, but also more small victories. Cole helped mend a broken fence, guided the horses through the fields, and even taught some local children how to ride safely. Each task was a reminder that life could be ordinary and meaningful at the same time, that peace wasn't just an absence of danger, but an active choice to live with honesty, care, and effort. Weeks passed, and Silver Creek began to embrace Cole as one of its own. The whispers about his past faded, replaced by respect for his hard work, clever thinking, and the courage he had shown against Jackson and his men. Cole no longer felt like an outsider. He felt like a part of a community that valued his actions, not just his past. Through it all, Lila remained by his side. Their bond deepened, not just through shared work, but through trust, understanding, and quiet companionship. Cole realized that love and trust weren't about grand gestures. They were about consistency, honesty, and standing by each other in both calm and chaos. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of red and gold, Cole and Lila stood together watching the horses graze in the fading light. Cole reached out and took her hand, feeling the warmth and certainty of her grip. "You know," he said quietly, "I never thought I'd find someone who would trust me, someone who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself." Lila smiled, her eyes soft but firm. "I already did," she replied, "and I always will." Cole felt a wave of emotion he could hardly put into words. For years he had lived in fear, suspicion, and solitude. But now he had hope, trust, and a future worth living for. He understood that redemption wasn't a single act. It was a journey, a series of choices, and the willingness to open one's heart to someone else. As the stars began to twinkle above, Cole and Lila walked back to the house side by side. The night was calm, the world quiet, and the future uncertain. But for the first time, Cole welcomed that uncertainty. With trust, courage, and the support of someone who believed in him, he knew he could face whatever came next. And in the quiet of Silver Creek, under the wide-open sky, a cowboy with a past as an outlaw finally found peace. He had faced his past, protected what he loved, and embraced the possibility of a life built on trust, hope, and love. And for the first time in a long time, he truly believed in tomorrow.